Okay, so I think we are live, and wow, we already have a few people watching. This particular webinar is one that I am very, very, very excited about. I think search advertising is sort of the core to PPC. It's something that when people think about Semrush, obviously there's the SEM side of it, but when people think of PPC, search is really sort of like the real classic version of PPC. And I think this webinar in particular is one where we're going to learn some really good advice about how to level up our game a bit. There's a lot of changes going on with Google in the search side, more than there's been for several years. So we are all very, very fortunate to have Brad Geddes here, who's been a longtime authority on advertising, on search advertising, and he's going to really teach us all something new. I mean, I'm looking forward to it personally. I know that I'm going to learn a lot as well. So until we get started, let's first see what's going on here. Like I said before, I have Brad Geddes, and we have Pinar and Robert, myself, Joel. And we have, so people are starting to introduce themselves. So please, so I just have an idea where the audience is from. Feel free to let me know where you're from. Also, feel free to enter in, to give me some idea, like let me know like maybe where activities are, if you're currently advertising, with search, maybe how advanced you are more or less. I see that some people here are pretty excited. So yeah, so it's looking good. It's looking good. Great. So, where are you guys calling from, Robert, Brad, and Pinar?
I'm in Washington, D.C.
I'm in Istanbul, Turkey.
Calling from Idaho.
Okay. Well, personally, I'm in Prague right now. I usually do this from Tel Aviv, which is where I'm based. So this is not my normal setup, but I think it'll work nicely. Yeah, we got quite a few people here. A few people working in a PPC. It looks like a lot of people working in agencies, which is good. Yeah, but by the way, this is a bit more of an advanced topic, which I hope it's a bit advanced, but I think that some of the aspects that might look hard about it might look intimidating in the beginning. I think what we're going to show you is some things that require a little bit of Excel knowledge. The thing is, though, is that this knowledge that you need is very essential. I think if you're going to take PPC up to the next level, it's also very simple and easy to learn. So one thing that we're going to do, by the way, so if you're watching and you're looking at the reports Brad's showing, and if you feel like intimidated, like okay, I don't know how to do this. This Excel work is above me. Don't worry about it. Don't in any way feel intimidated. We'll have another session another time where I'll walk you through the steps and explain to you how to make pivot tables in Excel and do the analysis that Brad is explaining. So like I said before, if it looks complicated, don't be scared, don't get nervous, just stick around and wait for we make the notification for the next webinar, and you'll learn it. And it's actually, you'll learn something that is going to be valuable, not just because of the way Brad uses it, but it's just valuable for pretty much anything you do in PPC. So like I said, really don't worry about it. Okay, so we have another 2 minutes or so. So I think what I'll do is to do your introductions and then give Brad control. By the way, the formatting here, Brad's going to present. We're going to pause for some Q&A in between each section of the presentation. If you have any questions whatsoever, put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. And then afterwards, we'll continue with a panel discussion where we're all going to speak about what we're talking about. So yes, we're all excited about this. Now, where did my notes go? There we go. So first off, I will introduce Pinar. Pinar is one of the co-founders of Kubix Digital. It's a search-focused digital marketing agency based in Istanbul and Berlin, which is very, very, very relevant for what we're talking about here. She started a new initiative called Women Digital, a network for women working in the digital marketing industry. Pinar has over a decade of experience in the search industry. Before Kubix Digital, she was a Googler in early 2005, part of the landing crew for setting up Google Turkey offices in Istanbul back in 2006. So we're very fortunate to have her here. She's going to definitely be adding value. Next up, we have Robert, who has worked on PPC accounts of all sizes across many industries. and has a soft spot for really helping small businesses succeed with digital advertising, which is amazing because that's like digital advertising is a way to give a small company like it's the power that was never seen before. You're able to just like get out there and get your message across to everybody in your community, and in a way that was not possible beforehand. So he is the founder of Righteous Marketing, a one-man PPC agency in Idaho. Recreationally, Robert loves playing ultimate frisbee and basketball, riding his mountain bike, and downhill skiing. So we're very lucky to have Robert here. And finally, I'll get to Brad. Now, Brad's been involved with PPC since 1998, which I think is about as early as anyone can go.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize you go that far back. Yeah.
That's nice.
He's the co-founder of Ad Analysis, a PPC recommendation engine used by thousands of clients and agencies to optimize the Google and Microsoft Ads accounts. His experience ranges from owning his own agency to overseeing programs that were official resellers of Google and Microsoft that manage more than 42,000 PPC accounts. Now, some brands that Brad has worked with include Amazon, Yahoo, Thomson Reuters, Salesforce, Google, FindLaw, and the Washington Post. I personally first heard of Brad back in 2010 when I started really getting heavily into PPC. I was running campaign at Wix.com, which is the first serious PPC job I had. And one of the books that really educated me was Brad's book, because he has a very, well, I think probably the most successful or best book out there on PPC advertising, at least at an advanced level. There's many intro books, but Brad's advanced book is probably the best one you could read. So that is always also recommended. So I think enough about that. And Brad, you can share your screen and begin the presentation.
All right, so my screen should be shared. So I think it's you. There we go. Who is so? What we're going to talk about today are the match type changes that Google's made, how that works in reality, the problems it's causing, how to diagnose those problems, and ultimately how to fix them if you have them, right? So the topic's a bit geeky, but we're talking about the search terms people use to find you. And they're, from a search standpoint, they are sort of one of the most important fundamental things to look at in your account. So when we look, right, at some of these match type changes, Google's changed every match type except broad in the past year. Right, so they started in 2018 with exact match, right? Where before you could match to things like misspellings and stemmings and stuff, and they started word substitution, which is sort of going to be an important theme as we walk through some of these match type changes. And they made it so word order doesn't matter, right? So what's happened is we see at times words suddenly are showing for search terms that don't really describe them, right? Copyright logos and copyright symbols are not the same thing, right? Their example that they actually launched with on their blog was Yosemite campsites and camping in Yosemite. We have a client who used both those keywords and they threw a fit the first day they saw this because they're like, in Yosemite, you have to worry about bears, right? And so campsites mean, hey, I want a place to put a tent. Camping means I need to know the safety stuff about how to camp with a big bear who may wander my campsite. Huge difference, right? In a few words. Now, in some cases, there's not a big change. New York City hotel, NYC hotel, hotels in NYC, you could probably write that 20 ways and not really change your intent. So not all of these were bad. Now, then July of this year, right? Google made a huge change because everyone who had problems with exact match had moved to phrase match. So we had clients who had actually paused all their exact match and were only using phrase. And then Google was like, well, we're going to change phrase match. Words with low semantic load. That's totally a Google term, right? Semantic load. Can be added or removed from a query. Words with the same meaning can be substituted. So we now see more word substitution. And word order is supposed to matter, but when you show examples to Google, they're like, oh, but it doesn't because of this. It doesn't because of this. There's so many exceptions. It might as well not matter whatsoever any longer. And so this is where phrase match sort of underwent a huge change. And the leader of this is often a word substitution problem, right? Where you've got a keyword, Kenya safari. Someone searches for Nairobi safari. Now, Nairobi is the capital of Kenya. except usually when someone searches Nairobi Safari, there is a safari, a big zoo in Nairobi. And from a travel agent standpoint, it's a very low order value. Kenya Safari is usually, hey, let's go out to the Masai Mara for a week. And it's a much higher value. So the location makes a big difference, right? Someone who's searching for, hey, cheap laptops, Google says, well, discount, sale, affordable, they all match the same keyword. Now, we could argue, well, the intent might be the same, but if you've got one ad group with discount laptops with the discount laptop ad, another ad group with, hey, here's laptops on sale, right, with the sale lab and the sale landing page, and here's our cheap laptop keyword. And you had different ads and landing pages for these. Google's often just picking which one they want to show for, ignoring your hierarchy. And so now someone searches for, laptops on sale. Google doesn't show your sales page. They show your standard laptop page. That's where these become problems. Now, the biggest change with broad match, modified broad match, was, again, word substitution changes. And so this can be quite extensive in how they are looking at modified broad these days, to where modified broad today looks a lot like broad match back in 2007, 2008, before they went crazy with broad match. And the root words may not be in there at all. So we'll see things like someone has a keyword trademarking. They want to show everything related to trademarks. And Google has shown them for logo design, right? Which is not at all that same intent. So from a searcher standpoint, what we care about, right, is the intent of the words a user typed in the engine matching our keywords or at our landing page. As soon as that sort of scent is broken, that's when we start to see poor results and when to take action. If things are doing great, all right, don't fix what's not broken, all right? It's when there are problems, we need to sort of look more into this, which we're going to do in a moment. So we look back at Pinar and Robert. What are some of the issues you're seeing as Google's rolled out these match type changes?
Well, first, for example, do you want?
Go ahead, Pinar.
One of the things I wanted to add is especially the language matching. We've seen that in some international accounts. Well, for example, we're targeting Germany, but the website is in English and we run English ads and we use English keywords. But then suddenly it matches with, for example, leather jacket matches with leather and then jacke. So that shouldn't actually happen, but it happens. So it makes the search term report a lot more relevant that we have to check constantly, actually.
Yeah, the language that I had, so we used to use broad match on occasion because it would match across languages, right? It was the only one that would match across languages. And now the language substitution is becoming an issue.
It goes to close variant, even exact match close variant. So I don't know what is how can we control these match types? Exact match is like broad match sometimes. So I don't know if you define it. I mean, the definition, it's different, but it's pretty open, I think, because you see really interesting queries matching, especially internationally, like when you check for different languages.
So Robert, what are you seeing?
Well, I have a B2B client that they do some, they're a consulting business. They do services with, Microsoft's Office 365 package. And so a lot of what Google treats as synonyms, and when they do that word replacement, really throws the intent off. Where situations where we're bidding on, a server integration, and they'll substitute the word services instead of server. And it's like, yeah, I can see how there's a semantic root in common between these words, but the intent is just way, way off. And then, they're bidding on training because they want to do on-site trainings for IT departments. And, we start seeing matches with courses. And it's like, well, that's someone who wants to take a class. They're not wanting an in-person visit. And so, I can see the justification when you start looking at these huge data sets of oh yeah, there's a relation between these words. But Google's gotten really loose with stuff. Their machine learning isn't picking up on a lot of those intent cues that I think as as human managers, you see that in a search term report, and you instantly know, like, oh, that's a negative. But their machine learning hasn't figured that stuff out.
Yeah, not to go on a tangent, right? We're going to stop the tangent, but in many ways, what we're really talking about here is fixing the mistakes of machine learning, right? If machine learning could figure this out, we wouldn't need to have webinars like this one to fix the problems, right? But I always remind, here's your trivia question for the day. What was Google's first machine learning algorithm used in paid search? Anyone know?
Oh.
Back in the day, there was CPM bidding.
No, quality score.
Oh, okay.
Quality score was their first machine learning. So they have more data for quality score machine learning than anything else. So I would say if you believe quality score is always right, then Google's machine learning can figure it out. If you don't believe all your quality scores are right, then maybe there's something machine learning still missing, right? Our bit of trivia for today. So, when we sort of look at accounts, right, and say, hey, what's going good, what's going bad, right? So we say, let's look at the worst of the worst. This is a poor account who's a lawyer, right? So they really care legally about what things are going on. They're a law firm, and they would see that Google's substitution with phrase match got so bad, they had to pause every phrase match word and move it to a new platform. They resisted Facebook for years. All their phrase match spend is now on Facebook. And there are sometimes ways you can fix this, which we're going to walk through, and other times that the liberties are too much. Now we say, well, where's Google getting this right? Usually, and again, right, there's always exceptions. Usually, when the industry has a lot of very similar words or adjectives that don't affect how a user converts, then there's not a difference. So for instance, let's say you search for green Nike size 11 shoes and Google shows the exact same shoe, blue size 12, but on the landing page, you can change the color and the size. Well, the user is just a little more work for the user, but it's not really affecting the conversion rates. Now, if you said, no, on our site, you can change your size, but not your color, that's a category level. So now a user gets to a page where, hey, they search for green shoes, they see blue shoes on the page, they can't change color selection on the page, they have to go to category, find it, go back to a product. That's when conversion rates really start tanking. Right. So if there's some scent maintained and the user can fix it, then that's still working well. So overall, in travel like flights, it's doing well. Luxury travel is not. Right. E-commerce is overall doing okay. Most people are seeing higher CPAs. In some cases, it is due to there's more advertiser bid pressure. Right. So a natural 5-6% increase in CPA year over year, not that unusual. And it's not necessarily always just match types as a problem. In some cases, it's a larger issue. Now, there are cases, the first two we can fix, where there's not good solutions. This is a wholesale restaurant supply company. When someone searches restaurant waiter clogs, plural, that exact phrase, their checkout value is $623. If the user removes the S from the word clog, they want a single pair. It's now a $91 order. So they're willing to bid 5 times more if you include the S. With the new match type changes, Google's now showing them, right, for these other words they had never shown for previously. Clogs for waiters, even shoes waiters wear. That's a phrase match, by the way. Shoes waiters wear to restaurant waiter clogs is a phrase match, query match in Google's mind. The amount of negative keywords necessary to try to fix this, where you only show for plurals versus not, doesn't exist. Google does not allow that many negatives. So in some cases, you now have this sort of new average order value you're bidding to, and you can't cherry pick specific keywords. And so if you look at your account and you've got 1,000 keywords and 5 really matter, right, which happens on occasion. If there's a lot of word substitution, you really have to go after those negative keywords, which we'll get into. If there's not a lot of word substitution, then you're okay for now, but you're going to want to watch that closely in case Google starts suddenly changing the queries that used to convert really well for you. So where we're seeing some of these problems stem from is, if we're going to look at the word in green first here. They have an ad group registered trademark with the exact match keyword registered trademark. Right now, when we look at the search term, when someone actually searches for the word trademark registration, well, the exact match word registered trademark has 19 impressions. The actual exact match keyword trademark registration for the query trademark registration has 0 impressions. And this modified broad match word that actually has a lower bid has 973 impressions. All the impressions in this count have flowed to the modified broad match terms, even though the exact matches exist in other ad groups. Right? This is where, when we start looking, we may have the same search terms in our query reports, but the keywords and ads they're showing for may have shifted. And so that will often cause the downturn in conversion rates, which is why we want to do this year-over-year comparison of match types to see, are we seeing these problems even though our impressions by query haven't changed, where they're coming from has changed. And that's why we need to do some of this analysis here. And so what it really means for you is, it used to be, if we were having ad serving problems, we could just go to phrase match, right? We could say, all right, Google, we give up, we're going to phrase. It's our sort of backup control. And that's gone now because of word substitution, language substitution. If you didn't do the work, you were kind of lazy in your setup, you only have 10 ad groups and each of them have 1,000 keywords in it, and you didn't really think about your keyword selection that much, and you probably should have added more, you're probably getting all those impressions now. You're probably seeing a lot without doing the work. Now, if you did the work, right, that's where the problem's actually coming in. The more work you put in to really work on the query to add to landing page relevance, that's where Google's really messing with it. And so kind of like the more work you actually have to put back in. Duplicate queries, which we're going to touch on in a second. And in some cases, a lot of poor intents. So when we just ask you, right, overall, how are the new match types working for you? Do you like the changes, dislike the changes? Do you have clients who are just killing it with these changes? How is that working, Pinar? Oh, you're still muted.
She might be muted.
Excuse me. Sorry. Sorry. Can you repeat that? I just missed the first part of it.
Oh, overall, just how are the new match types working? Do you have clients who are doing great with these match types?
So we have some bigger accounts and some smaller accounts. Just like you mentioned it, for some smaller accounts, we don't really bother to change it that much. Like, we use broad match modifier a lot. We try phrase match also, but we use quite a lot of exact match. So we expand on the exact match at first for the conversion rates, and then of course it really depends on their KPIs as well. But yeah, we are really still trying to figure it out at the moment, because we have some huge accounts, and it's really not easy, because it was very well structured, and now it gets a bit messy with the close variants and the exact match. So I don't know what's the golden rule for it, but I think it really is a case by case scenario.
What do you think, Robert?
Best case scenario with my clients has been kind of a no change. That's the best situation. It's just that things seem to be running similarly and there's no problems.
Really?
Which I think is what Google. But
now, Google would like to see
especially
more impressions, right?
Well, yeah, of course. They'd love to monetize more and more stuff. But I think that, especially it's with smaller budgets and high CPC accounts, it's been very problematic, because playing the whack-a-mole game with negative keywords still can suck a decent percentage of the budget out. Even if you're being very diligent and you are using a lot of negative keywords, and you're trying to actively sculpt some of those queries to the right places so that they see more relevant ad copy and such. And so I've found that it does take more time on, looking at search term reports, doing, the analysis, some of the analyses that we're going to see later in the presentation here. But I've had to be on top of it a lot more since they kind of opened the floodgates on this.
All right, Joel, do you have anything to add?
But Brad, yeah, a quick question about that, because like I would think it would matter on how targeted your campaign needs to be. Like if you're going for a lot of long tails and you don't have so many groups, and your ad mess and let's say a variety of types of searches could work well with like a few ad messages, then these changes might actually be beneficial. But if you're like, let's say the B2B client that Matt was talking about before, I think that's that Robert was talking about before, in that situation, then you could really get, you're going to be hurt by it, because people are searching for something very, very specific. The types of searches that you want to apply that you want your ads to be served for are very, very specific, and that's where I think it could hurt. I mean, right? That's pretty much it. So I think in Google's mind, maybe this is better to get more people on board, more people to more easily get into doing ads.
Yeah, well, I think some of the recent changes, if we look at the last maybe 3 years of changes, have been targeted towards the smaller company who hasn't done much and getting them more impressions and more automation. And the larger ones, they sort of assumed you're smart enough to figure this out and do the work to fix our problems. And that's kind of how I felt the last few years. Now, what we're going to get into next are pivot tables from Excel. If you know pivot tables at all, none of these take more than about 30 seconds to make. If you don't know pivot tables, then look for the invite from Joel in a few weeks, and he's going to walk through how to make some of these things. And it's not hard. Once you've done this, I don't know, 3 times in your life, the next one takes seconds. First one can take a little bit. So the first thing we want to look at, right, is do a just year-over-year comparison by match type to see how our CPAs and conversions have changed. Now, these are never going to be perfect because you have new keywords, you pause some keywords. So there may be times when, you had 1,000 broad match last year, you have 500 now, right? So it shouldn't line up exactly. What we're trying to just say is, hey, did our exact match went from $20 CPAs to $41 CPAs? We need to go dig into what's going on with the exact match, right? Or, hey, our modified broad went from 90 to 92. That's really not much of a difference. We're probably showing, so we probably don't need to spend less time on digging into the individual queries there as we do the exact match. So we're trying to just sort of narrow down. If you've got lots of keywords and ad groups, you can't look at everything, right? So where do we narrow this down? And if this were a massive account, we would then take the second layer saying, okay, we need to look at the exact match, but let's look at this by campaign real quick. Is this coming from 1 or 2 campaigns, the big difference, or is it account wide? And that lets us narrow down exactly where we should be examining this. Now, when we think about, there's the data just blown up. So when you're doing these comparisons, it's super tempting to go into the Google's tool, choose their time frame comparison, just apply the data. This is not going to always help you. So the way this tool works is you have an initial time frame, right? You're comparing to an old time frame. If in the initial time frame the data is 0, but in the old time frame the data was 500 or whatever it was, Google won't put it in the comparison because there is nothing to compare initially to something in the past. So for instance, if you had a keyword that was doing amazing a year ago, and for some reason it has 0 conversions this year, and you compare conversions over time, it won't show up because it has 0 right now, even though it had 500, right? And so that's the danger of this. And so what we usually want to do is truly download a time frame, merge them together, then look at our analysis. It's a little bit longer. It gives you much, much better data than relying on Google's comparison tool. That tool can be useful for quick things. If you need, like, hey, we need to fix a problem, it'll probably hide something important from you. So another analysis we need to do, right? If we say, okay, our exact match is doing worse. So one of our things we then want to look at is our search term data, right, that looks at here is the actual exact match keywords or phrase match keywords. Here is their close variant data. What we're trying to see, right, the match type itself is when the query, right, matches that keyword by that match type. The close variants are word substitutions, misspellings, words not in your account. So what we're looking to see is, do we have a large variation between the match type and the close variant, right? That will tell us that the changes to these match types are affecting our data a lot. So for instance, our exact match CPA is 30. Our exact match close variant is 30. There's a 46-cent difference. Big deal. The variants are matching pretty well for the exact match. In the phrase match, our CPA for phrase is $8. Our CPA for phrase close variance is $27. Our phrase close variants are not doing well. So we want to look exactly, right? We know where to start. We know to look at phrase close variants to see how things are doing. And so these are usually a couple good big picture places to start and understanding how the match types are doing. But a big question is, everyone thinks about close variants differently. So let's flip. Let's go Robert this time, right? So Robert, when you're looking at your query data, you're looking at variants, you're looking at close variants, you're looking at exact match keywords. What are you usually looking for?
Typically, I'm usually filtering whenever I go to search term report. I always try to get it so that I'm seeing kind of apples to apples. So with the rows that you had there, I'm trying to look at just the exact match close variants, or just the phrase, or just close variant versus not, so that I can understand a little bit more how diligent I need to be as I'm looking through those. Because if my keyword is already in there, like, I don't need to see that, so I can click on the added, excluded, none, and just take those out because I know that I already have the keyword. But really, what I'm looking for is, first thing is I look for stuff with a lot of clicks without a lot of conversions, and same thing with lots of impressions, not a lot of clicks. Basically, trying to identify anomalies, like things that outliers. Start there, because that'll usually kind of, the stuff that you need to pay more attention to kind of creeps up there. So that's where I'm typically looking, first. High impression with very low clicks, a lot of spend, not a lot of conversions.
Yeah, what we started doing is, especially for a big e-commerce client, is we really do it weekly. We look weekly at the main campaigns that we see some trends and that we catch them pretty early. So we also use filters, and then we use a very short period of time. If you do it regularly, then the work is not that huge than if you do it monthly or something. So that's it's a lot of manual work still, and there are scripts for that, I know, but we still go on a case-by-case basis, really.
Okay. Joel, anything to add? You can just shake your head yes or no if you want.
I have to unmute first. Yeah. One thing, I think basically, if I could summarize the lesson you're giving from this in a very short statement, it's that close variant isn't as close as it used to.
Yep. And you froze for a second there.
Yeah.
Oh, so I said close variant isn't as close as it used to be. I think that's the big lesson here. If you could really summarize it shortly, it's like, that's it. And that's a big change. Mostly, close variant has changed.
That's fair. That's fair. So
exactly about that.
Yep. So for those of you who are super advanced, right, we can get into Levenson distance. So all this it's a cool word, but all it really does is it looks at character differences between your keyword and the search query or search term. So what it does is say, hey, you have these exact match keywords, right? And this is good for exact or phrase, modified broad or broad, we expect to be at large differences. And, right, we've got this keyword Patagonia tours. Google dropped the word tours instead of for just the term Patagonia. So because they dropped the word, our distance between the two is 6, right? And the fourth example, Patagonia tours, was changed to Patagonia vacations. So suddenly now when we look at the character differences, it jumps to 9. And so this is a way to start looking at, hey, if we have exact and phrase match words, and we see distances of 5, 6, 7, sometimes 15, 20 characters, that means there's location substitutions and big changes going on. So it's really an easy way to identify, right, where the big changes are happening and not staring at things that are misspellings by a single letter. Or, hey, someone added a plural versus a singular version and it didn't really change things. But it lets you identify some of the bigger things easier. Because what's happening, and I know the screenshot's a little small on your screens, but this is how many duplicate key queries exist for this account for a single keyword. So what this is saying is, hey, this word, right, the search term Patagonia chili has now been displayed in 17 different ad groups. Right now, when you have the same search term from 17 ad groups, your bids aren't right because your data is so splintered. Your ads probably don't mirror this quite right. And when we look at the comparison, right, we look at a month of time in 2018, we would see 5 impressions, 0 impressions, 24 impressions. They weren't really big numbers for all these duplicates. Right after Google made this change, we look at the end of July of this year through August, the number shot up significantly to a point, and these are technically modified broad match, to a point I asked Google, did you change other match types and not actually get into it because they become so much more aggressive in the modified broad and broad match expansions. And in this case, by the way, the word Patagonia chili as a keyword is not in their entire account. They don't have that keyword anywhere, but they've shown 17 different ad groups for that particular query, right? That's how much Google's changing what they're showing for. And so we really want to look at duplicates because if you've got your really important keywords in 5 ad groups, 1 ad group probably converts worse. In reality, 3 or 4 probably convert worse than your best one, right? Your bids aren't right. Your ad testing isn't right. It causes a lot of issues. So it's actually a incredibly simple thing to do. Of you download your query data, you put in a pivot table, you say row labels my query, count of ad group is how many ad groups this particular word's been displayed from. If it's more than 1, Google has shown you from more than 1 particular ad group for that query, right? That's all we're looking at. And we could even add like an impression filter to say, if the impressions are 3, don't show us anything under X number or whatnot. But this will let us see, right, do we have a problem where our queries are so disparate across our account that we're not bidding and managing queries correctly? Now, what you should be seeing is primarily 1 ad group per query, occasionally 2, right? And if that second one is 5 impressions, who cares? Probably not worth your time. It's when you start seeing across a lot of major keywords, 10, 12, 13, 14 different ad groups, Google's just basically serving whatever they want to, and you need to sort of recap this control. Now, there are times the number should be greater than 1 ad group. This is a rental car company. They are in 154 different countries. They have an account they have a campaign per country. So you know what? They should have the same keyword 154 times in their account. So when we look, right, we can say, well, let's do count of ad group and count of campaign. Just do a simple math that says campaign minus ad group, what's the number? Now, this is dirty math because if in 1 ad group and 1 campaign, they were shown from 3 ad groups, but in 3 of their campaigns, they actually never got an impression or the impressions were super low, this might add up to 0 anyway. But it's going to find 95% of the issues very easily. And so this is really, if you're a plumber, you're in 5 cities, you have 5 campaigns using the same keywords, you should show 5 times. That's all this is trying to fix. Now, the slightly more advanced analysis, right, is when you start looking and saying, okay, so Google is showing our search terms in multiple ad groups. And we've seen that our conversions have sort of shifted in what ad group they're in. What we're often trying to find out is what were the search terms to that specific keyword that had the most conversions. And then let's do a time frame comparison saying this query to this keyword had 5 conversions last month, and now this keyword to the search term to keyword is down to 1, right? So a -4. So it's shifted to a different place in the account. So this is getting super granular and trying to fix overall big problems when Google's really messing with your ad serving. If they're not messing significantly with your ad serving, you don't need this level of data analysis. But it's one that can be super useful if suddenly Google is treating, like in this account, Google's treating the word trademark symbol, copyright symbol, trademark logo, copyright logo as the same word. Those are 4 very different things to an intellectual property lawyer. Therefore, they need to go to that level of analysis. Not always necessary. So when you see, hey, we have this search term in 3 ad groups, right? What we want to look at is what's our conversion rate difference by ad group, what's our CPA difference by ad group, and what is our ROAS by ad group. So in this particular search term, right, they organize by match types by ad group. I'm not going to argue that's good or bad. That's just how they do it. And so when this search term shows from their exact match ad group, they have a ROAS of 520% with this particular search term. Now, they use a different ad and landing page for the broad match. So when this search term is shown from the broad match ad group, their ROAS is almost 300%, but over 200% lower. Right? So they want to add exact match negative keywords to the phrase and broad match ones to force them to exact, because they make so much more per click when it's shown from that ad group. So usually with duplicate search terms, we're looking at negative exact match keywords to add. All right, Pinar, Robert, Joel. So what else, when you're thinking about search terms and search term analysis, what else should we be looking at and thinking about?
Well, first of all, if you're doing this analysis, do it if you're, don't compare campaigns that are targeting different countries, because they're not really competing with yourself.
Fair.
Yeah. That's one thing. And also about if I'm making them unique by ad group, what I've done is I'd always concatenate the campaign name with the ad group name. So that way they're unique. Yeah,
naming conventions are super useful.
Yes.
I found when you're thinking about negative keywords, and I think the Patagonia Chile example, well, you have to put more thought into what level you're using those negatives at. If it's something where it's showing up in so many different ad groups and you feel like you're just playing whack-a-mole, really consider putting that in an account level list, just so that you can blanket the whole thing if it's not worth keeping around. And then the other thing, and this is something I came across in a search term report the other day, there was a query, over 6 months, it had like 2,500 impressions, but the query was over 20 words long. And it's like, okay, I don't know how that's happening, but it says it's happening. And the keyword that was being matched to that query was like words 16, 17, 18, like very much towards the tail end of it. But if you're adding negative keywords, remember that negative keywords don't register past word 10.
Yep.
So like if you're seeing a query and like word 11 is the word you want to get rid of, just know that adding a negative for that word won't do anything to that query. So like really, really long, and this becomes maybe a discussion when we start talking about voice, where it's more conversational. You get really long queries with how do I at the beginning, and so it's like adding superfluous words to it that just add the count to the word count. But when you're adding negatives and you see problems, just remember that those negatives won't influence anything past word 10 in a search term. As frustrating as that can be, but they'll match your ad to like words 25 or 26, but the negatives won't match unless it's in the first 10.
Pinar?
What we do?
I did not know.
time is really that we clean up the negative lists, like we see, because when you go and add them manually and you add them as exact match, it makes sense sometimes to look at the whole account and see which ones can be account level, which ones should be campaign level, and then it gets cleaner once you have sorted that out, and you don't hit this 10,000 limit or 1 million limit, whatever you have in your account. So it is important to sometimes do a little bit of a cleanup.
Well, I think that a lot of scripts and people doing things really fast, you think that like you just pull down a report, you filter it in a certain manner, like a certain amount of spend with no conversions, add them all as negatives, and if you use in the interface, it kind of defaults to exact match negatives. Just remember that Google still treats the phrase an exact match on your negatives literally. So if you add it as an exact, it will literally only be that way. Like it will not make a negative for the plurals. It will not make a negative for misspellings. And so that's where you run up your negatives a lot. But something that can be helpful is looking at the whole query and saying like, okay, it's these 2 words of the 8. Anything with that phrase, I want to get rid of. And changing the default from, exact to phrase with just that little 2-word snippet, is bad, can help you, I guess, whack more moles with every blow rather than just one-offs.
Yeah, using this silently, a bigger thing, a bigger whacker.
Yeah,
bigger hammer.
Bigger hammer. Okay, or mallet. I don't know. It's soft though.
You're just looking to hit more moles at the same time.
That's right. That's right. I got a question though. I mean, this is somewhat on topic. Now, what about the idea that if you, with setting match types, I've always kind of understood that if you're targeting more exact, it's going to be harder to get served. Like sometimes with long tails, if you try bidding on a long term exactly with what it is, it's going to be more difficult for it to be seen than if it comes from a broad keyword. And if it does, it's going to be more expensive. Do you find that to be true?
There's an impression limit where it's true, right? So under 20, 25 impressions a month, then you get the low search volume, and Google is reluctant to serve it a lot. Although we see a lot of these low volume keywords actually get a fair amount of impressions. So usually if it's a low volume word, you can't go spend crazy amounts of time on it because you're just not going to do anything. And those get bundled up. When it's high volume, no, man, going after the long tail, high volume words is super useful. Although that may be an oxymoron, I'm not sure. All right.
So then to do them, so to do those, what do you think about the idea of running long, broad modifiers, like Jeep, trip, Nairobi, children with broad modifier? I mean, is that a bad idea? Because then you'll get maybe a bit more stuff, but because that broad modifier has so many individual words to it, it's pretty exact.
Yeah, well, again, since Google started doing location substitution on broad match modifier, which means at times they will drop a word from broad match, right? Broad match modified, which is an important difference now. So if you have, say, Kennedy tickets 2-for-1 specials, Google may show that for Kennedy 2-for-1 and actually drop the word tickets, even though that's the most important query to us, right? The word in there. So, but yeah, overall, yeah, definitely. I always find modified broads better long tail than any other match type was anyway.
Right. So I have a question from Matt Gazzola. He's doing some work for a dentist, for a dental surgeon. So here's an example. A lot of clients have been asking for dental implant grants, but they don't offer that. So should he just simply add the word grants as a negative, or dental implant grants to negative, altogether?
Well, my question first is, does it convert? Because we'll see things that you don't offer that does convert. So if it converts, do nothing. Right now, if it's not converting, you don't want to show for it, then yeah, just add the grants as a negative. Don't worry about the whole thing.
But what if you want to
always use data, right?
Let's say yes. No, so here's a real situation. So let's say people are searching for dental implants, and that you're bidding on phrase match dental implants. Dental implants converts very, very well. Dental implants grants doesn't convert as well, but it can convert. So you want to bid less on it. Should you then just add it as a keyword in the same group and give it a lower bid?
Yes.
But yes, but then the keyword with
Actually,
the higher
you add the keyword to a different ad group with a lower bid, and you make minus grants a negative keyword in the first ad group. So you have dental implants, minus grants, dental implant grants, lower bid.
They don't offer that service. Just add grants as negative.
Well, no, but people searching for grants might convert. Yeah, let's say they convert.
If it converts, right? That's the big if here. We don't know. We're just speculating.
He says that we don't want it.
Yeah. Well, then just make it a negative keyword at the campaign level and you're done, right? Or a campaign negative list level and you're finished.
So it looks like they get leads, but they don't want these leads actually. So that's the conversion that he sees in the account, but he says, I don't want these. That's how I understand.
Yeah, my guess is it's just there. That keyword is really tipping you off that this is a cost-conscious person who doesn't have the money to pay for it, and so they're looking for a way to pay for it. And so if you have the ability to finance it or give them some type of an option that is similar in its outcome with what they would get with a grant, I would say that that's kind of on the back end, how you're handling that lead once they come in. But if you just use the word grants as a phrase match negative, it's only going to stop your impressions from coming if that word was in the query. And so everything else related to dental implants, if it doesn't have the word grants in it, would be okay at that point, Matt.
And you should make both grant and grants a negative.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Right. I'm going to hit the next 10 slides quickly. So I'm not going to stop at our next Q&A one. So we have time for just open Q&A.
Okay.
All right. So number one, this is what Robert's talking about earlier, right? We go to our search query data. We build our filters for how we want to add keywords and add negative keywords, right? Which is why we say the none here, right? Which means you haven't added as a keyword or a negative. And then we save these, right? So what's been a common problem right now is someone says, hey, if it's got 2 or more conversions in the past month, I want to select it, make it a keyword, right? It's another common workflow on top of that. Well, if that happens, what's often happening is you're actually making duplicate keywords because Google decided to serve the term in 4 ad groups. And oh, wow, all 4 had conversions, even though not at the same CPA. You ran a filter that just said, show me more than 2 conversions per ad group, selected all, made them keywords. You made the problem bigger. So this is sort of like a flow chart I've used for years, except recently we've had to adjust it a little bit to say, here's our query. Is it converting? Yes, right? Which means we want to make it a keyword. We should ask ourselves, is it already a keyword? Because if we don't, it's easy to actually make more duplicate keywords and just sort of make the problem even bigger than it is today. So finding duplicate keywords, if you already have some, is the same process as finding search terms, duplicate search terms. Same pivot table, same everything, no difference. You're just using keywords instead. The difference is when we look at duplicate keywords, one of the things we can look at that's sort of interesting is quality score differences. So you have the same keyword in 3 ad groups, and hey, in ad group 1, it's a 10, ad group 2, it's a 9, ad group 3, it's a 7. Well, what's the ad difference here? And this account's bizarre because, actually, no, this one follows almost exactly. Their 10 is their much higher conversion rate than when it's a 7 in this particular case. But fixing duplicate keywords isn't negatives. It's just hitting the pause button on the extra keywords. Super easy. Now, where the biggest problems are coming from, I'm going to explain this quickly. This is a company who is a rental car company. Google treats the word hire and rental identically. If you live in Europe, you say car hire. If you live in the US, you say car rental. Users have a highly different CTR. If they search hire and see the ad says rental, they're a much lower CTR than they search rental and the ad says rental, and vice versa. Google treats them the same, right? So in a case like this, you need to add the negative keyword, right, to every hire ad group, all the minus rental terms and all the misspellings. In every rental ad group, all the misspellings of hire. So in this case, they had to reorganize to do this by campaign level because you run into negative limits when you try to add every rental misspelling to 2 million ad groups. There's not enough negative keywords possible. And so some of our structuring now may be looking at, hey, Google treats these words identically. These words are super important to us. We don't want to make a negative ad group keyword list for every one of these. So let's think about campaign organization with our negative keywords in mind in regards to new match types, right? And so when you think about some organization, usually if you're doing CPA bidding, automated ROAS, you can collapse your ad group structure some and not use so many SCAGs and so forth. If you're manually bidding, you can do it how you want to. Think about limits, right? That sort of gets into when we think about a different campaign, it's often not because of keywords, right? It's about budgets or it's about separating out ad differences. All right, I'm going to hit a recap, then we'll come back to all our questions. So look first, see if there's a problem, right? Look at your year-over-year data. Look at your exact match versus your phrase versus your close variance. If they're all the same, you probably don't have something, you don't have anything broken. Don't worry about all this right now. If you see problems, right, that's when you want to dig into it. But do look for duplicate queries, duplicate keywords, because they will just cause problems that underlie all the bid issues, testing issues in your account. When you add new terms as keywords, right, check to see if they're terms first. And there's been a lot made about a lot of structures. Often you can collapse structures and do quite well with automated bidding. If you want to automate a lot about this, you can take a look at us. Robert and Pinar both have a lot of good offers as well. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Joel to lead us through other questions, thoughts, and everything else.
You're
muted, Joel. You're talking, but you're on mute.
Story of my life. So this is a very off topic, but you just kind of want to blow your mind a little bit. I mean, it was mine. Imagine solving this problem with display. How do you know how badly your display campaigns overlap? I mean, is there even a solution to that? That's like a totally other story and issue. And I think that's one problem why display campaigns, especially when they get large, fail, is because there's too much inter-account competition. But yeah, as far as questions go, I mean, we do have some interesting stuff here as well. Okay, audiences with search. Like, for example, let's say you're advertising to like a certain tour company, right? Let's do an advertisement to advertise trips to see the Northern Lights. And you're a tour company operating in Alaska. Northern Light tours, Alaska, well, that can be pretty, that's one way to reach those people. What about people who just for Northern Lights, but but you find crossed with in-market audiences for people traveling to Alaska, if that's an audience, or you know what I mean? Or is that something you ever do, like kind of narrow the searches down by crossing with audiences, particular in-market audiences?
I mean, I'll take this, Robert. Pinar, do you have a statement here? Oh, it looks like we lost Robert for a second.
No, you can go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, definitely, right? So if you say we've got one campaign so usually when I go this crazy, I make audiences, I do them campaign level so I know the difference easier, right? So this is anyone searching, you search for Northern Lights Tour, Northern Lights Alaska, you're going to see ad group 1. And then we take, in that case, it would be like frequent travelers, people planning trips, etc. There's a few in markets in that category. You do things like Northern Lights, some a little bit broader keywords, but then add the in market or the audience or whatever, but only if they are under the target and bid. So they must search keyword and be in the audience. And that would be a different group because we're going to bid differently and we don't want them to overlap because Northern Lights is too broad of a term to show to the world, right? It's just going to get us too much terrible traffic. But a combination, sure, that would work great. I wouldn't say it worked great. It's worth trying.
Okay.
Audience.
Great. Let me see if we can find something. Excuse me?
I said audiences can work.
What
Depends.
Yes, yeah, it's a new feature, and I think it's interesting. And if we talk about the Bing advertising, right? I mean, don't they give you some extra power because of the different insights they have into who people are because of LinkedIn and whatnot?
Oh, in Microsoft. So Microsoft, you can use LinkedIn.
Yeah, I said Bing.
Yeah. So Microsoft has their
No, I mean
beta for
Microsoft, 'cause
LinkedIn data. It's
Microsoft
been
takes
beta
LinkedIn
forever.
data. Uh,
Froze.
okay. What about now? What about I mean, I see a lot of people here mentioning, talking about dividing campaigns, or let's say ad groups matched up. It's something I've seen happen a lot. Do you advise doing that, or are you against that?
That to me is a bid question, right? So if we're using an automated bidding system, the more segmentation we have, the less data, consolidated data we're giving it. And so I like collapsing things down. If we're bidding manually, do it however you want to. But remember, it's an ad group. If you split out your ad groups by match type and you're using automated bidding and your ads don't change, your landing page doesn't change, doesn't matter whatsoever what you did. Right? So what's the ad? When the ad or landing page changes, then it's new ad group.
You can try the
or the situation like if you want to you split something out and bid lower on it.
Yes, or that's a bid consideration. You can always bid by keyword, so that's sort of a not always even a consideration, right? Sometimes.
Okay.
Pinar, you were saying something.
Sorry, yeah, I was going to say that you can always try these things with experiments. I mean, if you use the experiments feature in Google Ads, it can give you good insights because it splits the traffic, and we do that when we cannot decide which bidding strategy we should use for a certain new bidding strategy for a new product, for example. Then we use the experiments.
Yeah, so I have to try more. I'm going to have one more question, and then I think we should call it a night, or depending where you are. So we have Anwar Hassan. He's asking, how does Google route a search term with particular keywords, and what happens if you pause or move that keyword or add another keyword that is similar to the existing keyword?
I'm pretty sure they're throwing dice right now. Because the problem is, right, if you pause a keyword, but Google says it matches to this one, it shouldn't change your impressions. If you add a keyword, but Google still thinks that same search term matches over here, it may or may not get any impressions. And so when Google deems the keywords or the search terms for the keywords are the same, then if you don't control it, there seems no rhyme or reason how Google is right now. And I don't like to be a negative Google all the time, right? I like a lot of stuff they're doing, but in this, it amazes me how random some of this looks. And we sent 20, 30 examples over to Google and said, what is going on? And they went, well, that's doing this because of these over here, and this one has a budget of this, and therefore that's showing. And every time they had a reason for why the matches weren't appropriate. But it fell in line with how the system's designed. So as marketers, right, like you want to know, you need some level of control to make things work. And so what a lot of this is just taking back control when the control has gone too far down a route that your CPAs or your conversions are suffering.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And that's exactly why and that control is what makes this work. If not, you could just like bid on the alphabet, bid on the dictionary and show anything, and it's also control that, that's really what online marketing is. And that's why it's, So, okay. So I think, we're pretty much up, but people are starting to ask more questions. So I will continue. Like if anyone tweets hashtag #SEMrush Live, we'll be monitoring it. I will, I think Brad might as well. So we can continue the dialogue there. It's really, really been a pleasure for me. Do you guys have anything you want to close with before we go?
I will look back through tweets. I'm catching a plane in like an hour and a half, so I'm out of here pretty soon. But I will definitely look back over them, tomorrow and see how things go. So FYI, if I don't join it right away, that's why. Pinar.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. We could talk another hour, I'm sure. And until we still have our search terms we can match and negative and everything. Like some people said, do you think that they will, no keywords one day? I think could be.
See, I'm still not positive. What there is, the difference in Facebook and Google, right, is ignoring the, we go there for different reasons. The search intent says, I want this, right? Facebook is an audience. Hey, these are your characteristics. doesn't mean you said, I want this. I think they're so powerful in someone sitting down and typing in those words that if they lose keyword, if they get rid of keywords, they get rid of their advantage over Facebook. Just personal thought.
Yeah, you're reaching people at the bottom, because like, to be real, I always tell people this: Google search advertising isn't really even advertising; it's sales. People are actually saying, "I want this," and you're competing with people saying, "No, get it for me. No, get it for me. No, get it for me." Right? That's not advertising. Like putting an ad in front of someone's face who wasn't actually looking for that ad, that's advertising. This is sales. Right. Okay. Great. So it's been a pleasure. For everyone still watching, like we will send an invite. We will post something later about like the tutorial that I'll give about how to make these reports, and I think that's it. So it's like we look forward to the next time.
All right, thanks, Joel. Thanks, Pinar. Enjoy. Have a great day.
Thanks.
You're very welcome.
Joel, thanks everyone.
You too.
Bye bye.